Okay, so I meant to look at that, but oh well. Let's see. Is there anything in the TikTok shop that actually applies? Oh, well, that would only add things in my showcase, and that's cool. Welcome in, everyone. Let's see, we're gonna drop the viewer wishes just because we are getting ready to do an interview. Welcome in, everyone.
A real friend, just like I'm a real boy. Sorry. I did drop the video.
I think what I will do is this. Because I'm actually using that for something. Let's see. Where is it in here? Is it even in here? Welcome in, everyone. Let me see if I can find it. It's gonna be right. I don't want to buy it. There. Just want to put it in the showcase. I don't know. I got in trouble for a lot of dumb things growing up. Hey, I'm somebody. How are you? Welcome in, everyone. Like, I spent a lot of summers grounded to my room because of the stupid shit I got into. My mom knew. She never told me she knew. I only got punished for the stuff that I got caught doing. Don't get caught doing the stuff. Okay, let me get this bad boy up and going because that way if we need to Google anything or reference fact checked, we can. Beautiful.
You are. You're saying you are.
Right? I read a lot of books. My mom had a library. I read most of her library growing up. Those same books are now sitting in my garage going, we need to be put in boxes and other boxes so one day we can be displayed on your shelves. And I was sitting going, yeah, I need a house big enough for just a room for books.
Yeah.
So I think one day I need to have what I've decided is a Nerdvana room, which is a den that's lined with all of Dan's Transformers and all of our nerd stuff, all my video games. And then I also need to have a little library where it's just lined with bookcases and books because books are good. Yes, I was waiting for you to join, Peter.
No. No.
Let me make sure you are turning up the volume. There we go. Okay, I can hear you.
All right. I don't think anybody can see me, but can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we don't have video.
Oh, fantastic.
Hey, trust me, for everybody, it's a learning experience figuring out how do I manipulate this thing so it works.
Well, I usually I use the live studio to go ahead and host these, not my phone. So hopping on my phone is always an experience.
Whereas I typically use my phone because it's a lot easier to maneuver around than the live studio is. Especially since I have the live studio set up for gaming.
That makes sense. All right. So while I am figuring this out, what games? I feel like if I'm going to be part of Nerd Talk, I should definitely know what I'm getting myself into.
So are you still there?
Yep, I'm still here.
Okay, perfect. It said live pause. I just want to make sure. I have a Legend of Zelda tattoo. I have Legend of Zelda huge figurines of Midna and Zelda and Puppet Zelda and Ganondorf. And then I have smaller, scaled versions of Ganondorf and Link actually up on the wall right now. Yeah, I'm a huge Legend of Zelda nerd. And he does a lot of Transformers. If you look at my camera, that is my living room. Those are Transformers.
That's pretty solid.
and then it accumulates in his Unicron. Not unicorn, Unicron.
Unicron. I feel like, I mean, for full transparency, so this is my credentials right here,
Love
my
it.
travel posters, and then I fell in love with Mass Effect way back in the day. And so that's a little bit of what we've got going on in my office.
Love it. So yeah, and as you can see, the Gigamax Pikachu, you know, all the Pokemon Squishmallows. Yeah. Yeah. I need help.
Okay, perfect.
So yeah, I'm a gamer. He loves his Transformers, and everybody's just a nerd. The way I look at it is, if you are passionate about anything, congratulations, you're a nerd. If you're passionate about sports and you can give me all the statistics about your favorite team, congratulations. That's just D&D for jocks. That's all that is. Like fantasy football is just D&D for jocks. We are all
okay
nerds
with
in our own way. That is nerd talk. It's just embracing the authenticity of who you are and accepting yourself for everything you love.
I love it. I'm 100% in favor of this.
Well, it's also, I started doing what I'm doing to give a community to kind of wayward lost souls where they don't have one. And unfortunately, the pandemic kind of showed us all that we are really isolated. We really are. Like when you had nobody to talk to and nobody called, what were you doing in your home? Going, oh my God, I am so alone. But it brought to awareness the fact that we have been pushed into this nuclear family idea, and we don't really do a lot of community living anymore. I grew up doing block parties. You know what a block party is, people?
I grew up in a military family, and so military communities are a little bit different, just in the fact that it's very communal in the base where you are and the living arrangements where you are. So it's definitely a lot of community living, which has always been awesome.
Yeah. And then especially like community when it comes to kids is having a community around. It really does take a village to raise a kid. I got 2 of them. 10 and 14, and without my mom and my husband and everybody else, there's no way. There is just no way. They are too much to handle by yourself.
Oh, no, I wouldn't say that. I mean, we have 3 teenage daughters. They're super easy to raise.
Right. She's been 3 going on 13 since she was 3. She'll be 11 this year. Oh God, she has her mama sass.
Well, that's a good thing.
To a degree.
It's a good thing. Once they have survived their teenage years, it becomes a good thing.
Oh yeah, it does. And the fact that I'm raising them to be the headstrong, independent individuals and cultivating that, because, oh no, please, I do not want them to be yes men. I do not want them to be sheeple. I want them to be the leaders that they're born to be.
100% agree.
But that's what we as parents have to do for the next generation, which, now to get into everything, everybody, this is Peter Crosby. He is running for Utah's House of Representatives in their District 2. Yep, 2. So we have him here to kind of discuss, what his platform is, why he's running, what he was doing or is still doing as a career while campaigning, because a lot of our candidates still working full time and campaigning full time and doing everything full time. They have to, because we live in a world where a lot of people can't take that time off to dedicate themselves to just campaigning because they have a family to support. Because we live in a world where, sorry, not sorry, one income doesn't support a family anymore. You're lucky if 2 incomes supports a family. Most people have a 3rd or 4th job for their household. He works, almost 60 hours every week. I have 3 jobs. I run my own business. I work part-time for a chiropractor, and I do this on the side. So a lot of people are in that position. So what I've decided to do is to find candidates across the United States and bring them on and have conversations with them about the important things that we are seeing today, money in politics and getting it out of politics, talking about grassroots representatives versus corporate politicians and how we, the people, need to step up and take our power back.
I had a good conversation in one of the other streams where we talked about our right to vote and how it's not just a right. We are obligated to go out and use our voices to vote, because if we don't, this is what happens right where we are. This is exactly what happens when people decide to abstain because there's no good candidates. I don't know who the candidates are. There's money in it, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of misconceptions because everybody thinks it's across the board. So we're going out and we're going, hey, not all candidates. There are some out there we can actually vote for. There's some we can have faith in. There's some that are really trying to fight for us because they see the injustices and they're like, you know what, I'm done. I am willing to put my hat in the ring and say, give me a chance. Give me a chance. So congratulations, you're getting a chance.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I appreciate you coming on here and saying yes and being willing to have the conversations. A lot of them, they're not going to be easy. It's going to be hard because we're going to be talking about current events and how certain current events are affecting us every day. Even though, oh, it won't affect us. Oh, no, it's been affecting us. And it is affecting us. And it's only going to get worse because, like it or not, there's a war in Iran that should not be going on, period. When your director of counterterrorism resigns and says there's no point for us to be in Iran,
it's a little problematic, I think.
Just a wheel.
Understatement.
Just a wheedle. But then we talk about, okay, well, what caused it? APAC. So I'm looking for people who are not taking APAC money because APAC, it's so deeply embedded in the politicians that we have now. And the reason why I call them politicians, okay, we're going to differentiate. Grassroots representatives are the people who are for the people and the constituents. They are not taking donor money. They are taking small donations. They are running clear, transparent campaigns. They are doing everything above board, okay? My opinion, you do not need $140,000 to win a district in your state. If you need that much money, you should not be elected because you do not know how to budget. Side note. So, where was I? Campaigns. Okay, so we have the grassroots. They're there for the constituents. Then we have the corporate politicians, and those are the politicians that, quite frankly, they're there for the corporations, the oligarchs, and they're to line their pockets. They are not there for the people. Those are the people who are trying to vote out of position because, like it or not, most of the state representatives are not actually working for the constituents, for the citizens in their states, and we need to change that. So first things first, I mean, okay, job, career. What were you doing before you decided to run, or what are you still doing?
Yeah, so my current work, I'm actually a director and a project manager for a research company that's based off the East Coast, but I live in Utah, so I get to work from home. I'm also an adjunct faculty member at Utah State University, which is Utah's public land grant institution. So I teach a course on emergent technology. I used to teach courses on American institutions and political science to incoming freshmen. But in the last couple of years, I've focused more on some graduate studies work. Before that, I worked for the university full-time. So I was in institutional research and focused on helping to solve and analyze problems. And I started my career actually in the private sector. So I came up in, oh man, I guess it's almost 20 years ago now, in a Fortune 500 company. I started in operations. Before I transitioned from operations over into a corporate analytical role, I had a staff of about 11, over 200 employees, about $15 million in annual revenue. And I actually left the private sector for the public sector because my family background is actually military service. So my parents were both in, my brothers were both in. I was headed that way. I blew my knee out when I was doing training one morning as part of an ROTC program. And the private sector was never particularly rewarding, I guess. Like at the end of the day, I didn't feel like the work and the labor that I was putting into that was leading to positive outcomes, generally speaking. And so I left and I went to public education and higher education because I felt like that was a space where just the inherent mission of the work that I was doing was valuable. And while I'm back in the private sector now, the company I work for is actually, it's not publicly traded. It's a smaller company, and I work in higher education. So now I go back and support the same presidents and provosts and deans and faculty members trying to figure out how to work through higher education, which has become a really challenging space to be in over the last couple of years. And so I find the work very, very rewarding. That's my professional background.
No, I love that. And that kind of helps to show that you do have experience with managing teams, with managing money, with managing this. Because again, that's what we need is, talking to people in other states where, what do you mean that district had a 350 million budget over budget? Like, do they not know how to budget? Obviously not, because then that affects the other districts around them because now somebody's got to bail that district out. Because if you're spending money you don't have, well, the money's got to come from somewhere, right? So
The
it's one
money
of
always has to come from somewhere.
yeah, the money always has to come from somewhere. Everybody's going to get their piece of the pie, even though if there's no pie left to give. That's when you start scrounging for crumbs, and we shouldn't be there. A lot of the states, they should be set up to be self-sufficient. I mean, they really should. I mean, we should figure out how in each state we can generate the amount of revenue through either taxes or, trading resources, selling off various different resources. So that way the state itself can fund its repairs, its education, its healthcare, all of those things where we're not relying on the federal government as much, because that's where we're having issues is we've gotten to the point where a lot of states just rely on the federal government and the money given to them in order to bolster all the projects. So when we're not getting it because the Trump administration has decided not to give certain states whatever portions or allocations that they were originally supposed to get, we in turn then see, okay, people are struggling with healthcare, they're struggling with education, they're struggling with getting access to, the basic things that they need in order to, so I really do think that's great that you've had, experience both in the private and the public sector. In addition, you grew up in a military family, so from their point of view what it's like to have all of that stuff, and all those different moving pieces in the cogs. Hi, Hira, welcome in. So the next step is, what is your platform? What is your goal? What do you hope to achieve if you are elected to this position?
All of the things. Like, the goal is all of the things. And realistically, that's just not something that you can do in 2 years. So House terms are 2 years. And we really, as we started to build out the campaign and figure out what our platform is, this all started about 6 or 7 months ago. And the platform that we have now is a reflection of the conversations that we've been having across northern Utah for the last 7 months. So I have talked to hundreds of people over the phone. I've talked to hundreds of people in person. We have about 70 or so folks that have volunteered with the campaign. They have made a bunch of phone calls. And really it's this, we're here to try and figure out what you need, because if I'm going to be your representative, then my platform should represent your concerns. And we've had 3 things that have kind of come to the surface here. And some of these I think are broadly felt across the United States. Some of them are pretty specific to northern Utah. The first one is actually an affordability crisis, which I think a lot of people in the US are feeling right now. You had mentioned, for example, that even a 2-income home, it can be really challenging, especially if you have kids, to try and provide the same kind of life that we grew up with, right? That our parents were able to provide for us. We don't always have the same opportunity to provide for our kids. And so in Utah, that's reflected in a couple of key ways. The first is housing. Utah happens to be one of the most expensive housing markets in the United States. And when you look at a median wage, so I have housing prices here over $500,000 is kind of the average housing price. I've got a median wage that's anywhere between $55,000 to $70,000, depending on how you want to kind of slice the wage profile. That means that as a single person, I will never own a home. And even if I'm married or living with somebody and both of our incomes are going into that, it's really, really difficult to own a home. And so we have a serious concern here about what's going to happen for the current and the next generation when it comes to home ownership. About 30% of Utah's population actually rents. And of that 30%, 90% of them have no expectation of ever owning a home again. And so when we look at affordability, one of the very first things that we're concerned about is, well, how do we help address this cost of living crisis as it exists in home ownership, and how can we help? I do think some of the work that has happened in the Senate, I think Elizabeth Warren was responsible for helping to try and push through a bill that disincentivized corporate ownership of single-family residences. Like, those are the kinds of policies that have to take place at the federal level. Local governance just isn't able to do that effectively. And I think that's the right direction for some of this policy making. The other some of the other affordability issues we have are in healthcare. So we have a fairly significant rural population in Utah. We're an Intermountain West state, and so we have some pockets or centers of population, but a lot of rural communities. And when the big beautiful bill was passed last year, which our representative helped write, Blake Moore helped write that, he cut out subsidies, ACA subsidies, and we saw significant reductions in funding for things like Medicaid. Those disproportionately impact rural communities first. So a lot of research has been done by people like the Rural Healthcare Alliance, nonpartisan organizations, right? And what they're saying is these cuts that we have seen to healthcare are going to directly contribute to hospitals closing in rural communities. And some of the first services that we're going to lose access to are emergency care services. And so if you live in a rural community and your hospital closes, you have an emergency, healthcare emergency, you now no longer have access to the kind of medical care that would have saved your life or the life of your grandmother, right? Or the life of your neighbor or your friend, because we have seen these cuts. Now, the Trump administration has said, well, we're going to give all this rural healthcare money back. In Utah, we lost about $100 million and they gave us like $20 million back. And so we've got this like 70, I think it's like 20 to $30 million back. So we have like a $70 million funding gap. And we have to now figure out how to make up for that because the healthcare is gone. And the most straightforward solution is, well, you just cut the services. And so that's a serious problem. Also on healthcare, I think this is just being felt broadly across the United States. So the company that I work for, again, really good company, but healthcare costs for us, so the healthcare company that we contract with, our individual healthcare costs went up like 40 to 50%. That's not even the largest percentage increase I have heard of in talking to people. Healthcare is just getting inaccessible for even folks who are working full time. We're very fortunate. My wife works for the university, and so we're able to use the university's healthcare to cover our family. If she wasn't working there, healthcare for us would be such a significant cost that I don't know that we would be able to do almost anything else extracurricular for our kids. Like that would just be the reality of the situation. And a lot of people in northern Utah feel that pain. And then I think the other one from an affordability standpoint is just the cost of living crisis in general. So grocery prices have gone up, I think, about 3.5% on average across the board for all sorts of different kinds of basic goods and services. The current illegal war that's being taken place, Trump decided to start another war in the Middle East, is driving up oil prices, which, yeah, sure, they directly increase our gas costs, but it increases all of the transportation costs for absolutely everything else as well. And that's on top of an illegal tariff regime that the current administration imposed on everybody, which is just a double tax, right? Because now that the Supreme Court has said, well, that was illegal, over $200 billion that American consumers had to pay, because China didn't pay that, Mexico didn't pay that, Canada didn't pay that. They charged our importer-exporters, who then passed on those costs to all of our small business owners, and then we, the consumer, had to pay those costs, or the small business owners had to pay those costs. Now we have to go ahead and refund them back to the importer-exporters. So that's $200 billion we lost in upfront taxes that were illegal, and now $200 billion in American taxpayer dollars are going to go to refund those companies that were at the front of this whole economic chain. That means everybody's life is just more expensive. My wages haven't gone up, right? Like if you look at how wages have changed over time, we are well below where we would have expected have wages had kept pace with things like just inflation. And so Americans today are functionally poorer than we were a year and a half, 2 years ago. And that is here in northern Utah too. Like it's a huge problem. So the first thing we'd want to do is try and solve some of those affordability issues. And that's addressing policy towards home ownership and private and corporate ownership of residential property. It's policy that says, you know what? The United States is the only developed nation in the world without a single payer healthcare system. We need to start providing basic healthcare access for everybody. And we can keep private insurance, that's fine. If people have disposable income, they want to spend it on that, like that's what your disposable income is for, knock yourself out. But everybody should have access to basic healthcare. And we need to go ahead and get rid of this tariff regime that is making everybody's life more expensive. Like those are straightforward policy things that we can do if Congress is a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate after the elections this year in 2026. So that's like the first big issue. The second big issue that a lot of people bring up as we talk to them is a real concern that our national government has become lawless. And so we look at Donald Trump, we look at the fact that he has just launched a war, right? And Congress itself, because it is Republican Congress, has refused to check his war powers. And so we are sending American soldiers and service members to the Middle East once again to fight and die, and we don't even know why. We are spending over $1 billion a day on this conflict, I think, based off of estimates that have come out of the DoD. For what? Like, genuinely, for what? What was the purpose of the war? What are our end goals? What's the objective that we hope to achieve here?
Yeah, day 12, they'd already hit $17 billion.
Yeah, like it's negligence on so many levels. We also have a president of the United States who has raped and abused children. That's very clear. Like, the FBI itself has said that the interview that they had with a 13-year-old is largely verified. They were able to validate almost all of her experiences in there. President of the United States is not alone in that position among other officials within the current administration. And our Congress, I'll be clear. I think I disagree with Representative Massey on almost all of his policy, but the fact that he has stood up and said the Epstein victims need to be heard and there needs to be accountability for the people who have perpetrated this, regardless of political affiliation. Like, this is just a straight up American value problem. I respect him for that.
It's a world problem, because when we can sit here and we're supposed to be the leaders of the free world, and we're watching England and Israel and Saudi Arabia and all these other countries that had people involved, and they're holding those people accountable. Well, not sorry when I say that makes us look really bad. Really
It does. I mean, it fundamentally does. And so people here are concerned about that, right? They're also concerned about the fact that we have a federal government that has shot and killed American civilians in American cities. And there has been very little sort of oversight to go ahead and make sure it doesn't happen again. The current government shutdown associated with the Department of Homeland Security, I'll give the Democrats in Congress the credit I think that they deserve on this particular issue. They have refused to back down this go around. And they have said, listen, separate ICE funding from everything else. You guys control the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and the White House. You can do this, Republicans, if you want to. Separate ICE funding from everything else. DHS, the Coast Guard, the TSA, everybody else gets fully funded. And let's solve this ICE oversight problem that has led to the death of American civilians and the human rights abuses in general separately, as a separate issue, and we can work through that and let the government itself continue to function and help Americans. And Republicans have refused to do that. I put this squarely on their shoulders, right? Like, they have not done what they needed to do to ensure that there's accountability for abuses of not just human rights, well, not just American rights, but human rights in general by certain agencies within the federal government. And that's a pretty significant concern that populates here across northern Utah. I would say the last big one, and again, from a platform perspective, things that we're focused on finding solutions for, is we have an inland lake in Utah. It's the Great Salt Lake. It's the largest saltwater body, inland saltwater body in the United States. And it's drying up. And because of agricultural and industrial use, the lake bed isn't just salt. It also contains a lot of heavy metals and industrial runoff. And so as the lake itself dries up, and we are in the driest year on record for snowfall in Utah, so we're not getting better. As the lake dries up, the bed itself turns to dust, and that dust gets caught up in the wind and it blows all across northern Utah, which means that people all across northern Utah are breathing arsenic. And they're breathing heavy metals, and they're breathing other carcinogenic agents, and it will absolutely devastate our communities and our economy and anything else that you might care about if we don't find a solution for this problem. And so we are focused on federal engagement on this particular issue to ensure that the Great Salt Lake has the resources it needs to be maintained. And to be clear, this is also a state issue. Like, this is very much a state issue. The state of Utah has to have local governance in this space. But the federal government exists to provide resources when you have an issue too big for any single state or community to effectively address by itself. That's why we are all united together in a single union. And so we are concerned that the federal government and our representative is not doing enough to help address this problem that is going to fundamentally devastate our communities. And so that's really our platform at its core. We are focused on everyday Americans, making sure that they can live and not just survive, but have a chance to actually thrive. Like, we shouldn't be content just barely scraping by in the largest economy in the world. We are focused on bringing accountability to a government that has become lawless and reckless and is filled with people that have harmed children. And we are focused on solving real practical issues, especially environmental issues that are going to have broad impacts across our communities if we don't find solutions for them.
No, seriously, as somebody who's been an environmentalist my entire life, I talk about, if they continue drilling along the Yellowstone. So here's the thing about Montana and the Rocky Mountains is Yellowstone's lava veins run through the goddamn Rocky Mountains. All of it. It's all attached. If they continue drilling and they go back to mining along in the Rockies like they reopen these mines that are right along the lava veins. Well, the whole reason why they closed them down in the 60s and 70s is because every time they went to work, Old Faithful tried to erupt. So if they start actually hitting those, there's a good chance that they're going to cause Old Faithful to spew because it's been trying to do it since the 60s. They stopped drilling, they stopped mining, they stopped doing everything in the Rockies. They closed off a good chunk of Montana and it stopped. They're getting ready to reopen all of them. Why? Because they don't care what the reports from the 60s and 70s is, because those people didn't know what they're talking about. Our guys say it's fine.
I think it's pretty clear right now that we have a system that is not oriented towards helping people and everyday Americans. It's oriented towards corporate profit. Like, that's really what it's oriented around. And that's 100%. It's led to a lot of really harmful outcomes for just everyday people. And I mentioned, I have 3 teenage daughters, right? For the first time in a generation, my life as a millennial is fundamentally harder and poorer than my parents.
Yeah.
And the United States hasn't seen this, right? Like, every generation was able to do a little bit better than the generation that came before them. Yep. My generation is worse off comparatively than the generation that came before. And my kids and your kids, they have an even worse outlook than we do if we don't fundamentally shift something right now. And that's why I'm running. It's my responsibility and obligation to make it better for myself and my kids and hopefully my grandkids. And if I don't step into that space, who will? Right?
Exactly. And mind you, I've had people go, "Oh, Shadow, you should run." Yeah, I could. And you know what? Let's be honest. I would probably win. I'm a very charismatic person and I have drive and I want things to be better for everybody. Or I could do what I always wanted to do as a teenager and be the next Barbara Walters and be a political journalist and talk to people and interview them and get them out instead. And then maybe 10 of those people get elected and maybe then we're helping 150,000 people instead. That's how I want to use my voice is, okay, beautiful. I have found people who want to step into those roles. Let's get them in those roles because they actually genuinely want to help us because they see the rot from the inside out, same as we do. They understand the federal government, like it or not. Yeah, your constituents are right. The lawlessness is rampant. And believe me when I say it's seen across the board. I hear from a lot of, "Oh, I voted for him, but there's not what I voted for." And I'm looking at them going, "Shall we actually go through the list?" They're like, "Okay, well, maybe I was stupid." I'm like, there we go. Okay, accountability and ownership. Let's be honest about it first. Let's take accountability and ownership and admit you screwed up. And then ask, what can I do to help fix it? Perfect. Listen, vote for the right person. Go out and use your voice. Don't say that my voice doesn't matter, my vote doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter in the end because it's always going to be X, Y, or Z. Well, it's going to be like that if you don't go out and use your voice. Yeah, you're right. But I keep hearing, it's too late. No, it's not. Because here's the best thing about fighting back is it's not too late as long as there's one person who's willing to stand back up. As long as one person is willing to stand up and one person is willing to lead the charge and one person is willing to be a voice, there will always be a second. There will always be a third. Because here's the thing is, human beings like chain reaction. Not a lot of people like starting the chain reaction. They're okay continuing the chain reaction as long as somebody else has started it. So congratulations, I've started it. I'm the first shot, you're the second shot, or you're the first shot, I'm the second shot. Let's do it. You know, because that's just exactly it. Is we need to band together as a people, as a community, and say, this is not right. I'm not okay with this. Let's do better as a people. Let's vote them out. Let's get people in who want to help change the lawness of our government and admit, hey, you know what? The war in Iran shouldn't be going on. I can sit here and tell you exactly the reason why. Jared Kushner, $2 billion, Saudi Arabia. Need I say more? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, please go do your research, because the second you start looking those up, you're going to be going, oh, that's why we're in Iran. Because then it's like, oh, well, that they are the big supporters of AIPAC. And a good chunk of our Congress is bought by AIPAC. Oh, that starts to make sense. Jared Kushner is going back to Saudi Arabia, asking for more money in exchange for our troops being in Iran. I'm not joking about that one. Again, go look up Jared Kushner. They have transcripts of conversations where he is saying, yes, for this amount of money, we will stay in Iran. And it's going to his personal private business, his private contracting business, which got a huge Department of War contract recently.
I think this is, there's a corruption problem that has always existed and always will exist anytime you have humans and they find some opportunity for gain, right? Like that's just kind of human nature. And there was a social contract that Americans and I think other people who are in representative democracies, we understand, like we're not dumb, right? We understand that the system's not perfect and we understand that there's always going to be some problems with it. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, the agreement is largely this. We believe in the rule of law and we think that that law should be fairly applied to everybody. That's the basis, right? So we know the law may be imperfect, but we think it should be fairly applied to everybody. We are Americans, and so we believe that innocence is more important than guilt. So you're innocent until proven guilty, not the other way around. But you have to have a society that is based off of the rule of law. We also think that everybody should have a fair chance in general, right? Like we get some people are born wealthy, some people are born athletic, some people are born a little more intelligent, whatever. Like we get that, again, life is not fundamentally fair where you start, but we think that everybody should have a fair chance to go ahead and improve their position. That's the American dream, right? With a lot of hard work, a little bit of luck, and some community support, my life can be fundamentally better than my parents were in front of me. Mm-hmm. And what we see now, and it's blatant, right? It's just blatant, is that there is a tiered system for justice, for economic prosperity, for just inherent societal access to anything. And that tiered system is designed to harm most Americans while benefiting very few. And that, I think, has reached a breaking point across, and again, this is across party lines. Mm-hmm. I talk to people who are union workers who are conservative. I talk to union workers who are more progressive. I talk to small business owners. I talk to single moms. I talk to soccer moms, right? I talk to guys that are white collar workers and guys that are homeless. And across the board in those conversations, there is a recognition that our current administration is corrupt and that a tiered system has been put in place for justice and for economic prosperity. And we're not in the club.
No, we're not.
We're not. Like everybody else, we're not in the club. That club is very small. And we know it. And I am, while that is terrible that it has happened, I am grateful that at least enough people recognize that they are starting to stand up and say, we can do something about that. We can show up, we can show out, and we can ensure that the system has a chance to get better. I I am grateful. I am beyond grateful for everybody who volunteers their time or their talents or their services or their resources and says, it's a hard thing to do, but we're going to go make the world a little bit better tomorrow than it is today. Because today we got some problems and we want a few less problems. And so I agree that a lot of the issues that we have right now are a direct result of corrupt individuals acting corruptly for their own benefit, and it directly takes away from Americans, just everyday Americans. And we're not okay with it anymore. And we're done. We're going to do something about it.
Here's the thing is, I think for the most part, most of us haven't been okay with it, but we haven't been, it hasn't been a large enough majority for something to happen. And now it's become a large enough majority for things to finally snowball and say, listen, we have enough people now that are sitting there going, nope, I'm done. I'm done. Fix this. I'm done. Because it can't continue like this. And we know that politics have been corrupt for generations. I mean, we just have to look at, go back to the 1920s and you can see where the corruption kind of just fed in and who was in on it all the way up to now. It's very apparent when you go back with hindsight is 2020. At the time, there were some people that, conspiracy theorists, they conspiracized about all of it. And then it turns out, how does it feel to be a millennial and know that most of the conspiracy theories from your childhood and teenage years are true?
I still haven't met Mothman, and I'd like to sit down with Sasquatch. But outside of that, I do feel like I owe an apology to all of the people that I used to make fun of for conspiracy theories. Because it's just, time and time again, we have seen what was supposed to be outlandish. There was more than just a kernel of truth in that, right? Yeah. There was more than just a kernel of truth.
And that's, that's sad. It really is, because a perfect example is the Epstein files is all of the things. Well, listen, I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Missouri during the late 80s, early 90s when all those girls were going missing, okay? Two of the girls I actually went to Girl Scouts with ended up going missing, and still to this day, I'm 41. We don't know where they are. We don't know what happened to them. I'm afraid that when they finally release the entire files, I'm going to find their names in there. Why? Because that's a big fear, knowing that they were taking girls from that area. They were taking my classmates from that area. We've already know of a few other girls who were in the Epstein files, who were from that area, who grew up 20 minutes from where I lived. That's terrifying. And then we look at it now and it's like, it's not really gotten better when it comes to kids and women going missing. That the human trafficking is still there. It's just now disguised under another name. I mean, do we need to talk about the detention center in Texas where they're sending all the underage pregnant girls who got pregnant once they were in custody? Make that make sense. Am I the only one who knows how that works? How babies are conceived? I've had two of them. Come on, people. We know how babies are conceived. Do we need to have anatomy 101? Reproduction 101?
Yeah. So Salt Lake recently found out that the federal government had purchased a really large warehouse and is going to turn it into a detention center. And if you're not from the area, this may or may not be a thing that you know. Utah used to host Camp Topaz during World War II, which was a Japanese internment camp. And I've been out and visited what's left of it. It's not much. They bulldozed the whole thing and tried to cover over most of it. Utah already has a history of forced internment that was wrong. Camp Topaz was wrong, right? It was wrong to go ahead and intern American citizens against their will, take their homes and property away from them, and force them into these camps. It's wrong today to do it. It's wrong to have detention centers wherever they're located that are forcibly separating families, where you don't have enough food, you don't have enough water, you don't have access to the hygiene and medical care that you need, and where now we know that some of those people are being raped. Because there's no consent in a prison warden environment. If you are a prisoner, you can't give consent if somebody wants to engage in sexual activity with you. There's just a power dynamic there that makes it non-consensual. That's just the fact. And so if you were not pregnant before you entered into detention or before you entered into federal power, and you're pregnant now, well, something has happened in the intervening months and it was non-consensual. That's just factual information. And I am deeply frustrated, again, that our representative here in Utah, this is just not an issue that he cares about. It's not an issue that he'll step out on. It's not an issue that he talks up about. Because at the end of the day, what we have found is that Representative Moore, well, he's a very nice person. I've met him in person a couple of times. I've never heard anybody say, oh, that is the meanest guy I've ever met. He seems like a very nice guy. He's a fundamentally bad representative, and he is beholden to Donald Trump and to Mike Johnson. Mm-hmm. That's the only way that we can anticipate how he's going to vote. And it's the only way that we can anticipate here as his constituents what he's going to do. And Donald Trump, if he doesn't care about an issue, Blake Moore doesn't care about the issue. If Donald Trump says we're going to do something, Blake Moore says, great, that's the thing we're going to do. There's no morality behind that decision-making process that we can observe. It really is just whatever Trump has saying we're going to do for the last year and a half, that is what Blake Moore has done.
Yep. No, we see that here in Indiana where, oh, God love the Indiana reps who actually stood their ground and said no to the gerrymandering, because that happened earlier this year and they voted it down. And we're like, they actually stood their ground against, Mike Braun. Holy crap, because he was threatening their jobs. And they said, fine, threaten them. I just won't run for re-election, but this is not okay. And I'm like, good on them, because Indiana is not known for having its backbone. But keep in mind that this would have been the first election that Indiana would have flipped blue. However, if you watch the election results, at 4 p.m., they had already called Indiana and they still hadn't finished counting all the votes.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know enough about that situation to comment on it intelligently.
No, and that's fine. That's fine. That's just something where I have, and they've been doing independent researches and studies. They've been people where, so back in September, and if you search really hard, you can still find it. There was a video clip of Elon Musk even admitting that they tempered with the boxes, and he told them to look at any county in any state that had 50 votes or less for Harris, because those were the boxes that were tampered with. So they've been going through and recounting all of those counties, and they're coming out significantly blue. Like, oh, there was not just 50 votes. There was like 5,000 votes kind of differences. So it's one of those like, yeah, just kind of going to show exactly what was going on and how hard they were fighting to make sure this agenda happened. And, I know why that's why people go, well, that's why voting doesn't matter, because this time around, out of how many elections, we had one that was actually stolen. So why don't we make sure that never happens again, people? And the SAVE Act is not the way, because the SAVE Act, all it's going to do is just disenfranchise over 70 million Americans. And I'm not talking just women. One of the first candidates I interviewed, his last name's hyphenated. He's got to get his stuff fixed, or otherwise he can't even get on the ballot.
Yep.
I mean,
go
ahead.
And it's unnecessary, right? Like, at the end of the day, it's fundamentally unnecessary. So we actually have vote by mail in Utah, and we've had it for years. Over 90% of Utah voters use vote by mail. The state actually just released a report. We don't have fraud issues. We don't have problems with elections being stolen. We don't have problems with people sending in 300 ballots inappropriately, right? Mm-hmm. Vote by mail fundamentally works. It gives you a paper ballot that you can track. We know who the voters are. They can go ahead and confirm, yes, that was or wasn't my ballot, because they have to sign it. The post office is reliable, or at least they're reliable when they're allowed to be reliable.
Right.
Those postal workers, they work hard, they care about their jobs, they're good at them, they care about the integrity of the work that they're doing. We have never had a problem in Utah with vote by mail, ever. And the SAVE Act and trying to force additional forms of ID, we know it's unnecessary. When you go to register to vote, you already have to prove your citizenship.
Yep.
Like, that's already part of the process. Non-citizens can't vote in federal elections. Like, that's already part of how the process works. And so this really just is an opportunity to try and suppress and repress Americans from participating in their democracy. And again, nonpartisan issue. I don't care what political ideology you have. I think you should be able to participate in your democracy. That's your right as an American citizen. And if a government, again, whatever ideology they are, says we're going to try and make it harder and more difficult for you, a franchised individual, to participate in your institutions, that government is wrong.
Yes.
And they shouldn't do that. Yeah. No, the SAVE Act, we have 3 daughters. We've told them all to keep their last names when they get married because we have no idea what's going to happen in the future.
So I've been married twice. Second time, it's been 8.5 years now. I kept my maiden name both times. Why? My son's last name is my maiden name. So to make it easiest, one of his parents has his last name. And then when we gave my daughter her last name, it was one of those, he didn't care. So I flipped a coin and I gave her her dad's last name because I just didn't want to hyphenate it because that would be too much. Good Lord. I have a long name. He has a long name. So it's one of those, no. And I'll be telling my daughter, honey, and she knows, you don't have to change your last name when you get married, and men can change their last name too. So it's not just the 70 million, because they're talking about 70 million women. Yeah, okay, so there are like 70 million women who got married and changed their last names. But there's also, let's say, another 500,000 men and others who are in different situations who changed their name because they did not like their birth name. Those are the people who now at this point are going to have issues. It's not just women. It's a huge group of Americans, period. And that's the way we have to look at it. It's not just men, not just women. It's Americans. And then the fact that they're trying to take away American right to vote, regardless of gender, because of XYZ, that's a problem. These are all problems where you have men who are literally sitting there preaching the rhetoric of how women should not have a voice, how everything went downhill once they gave women rights and they gave them the right to vote and all of these things, and it should just be men only. It's like, do you guys not realize that that's the whole reason why we are in the situation where we are to begin with, is because you've never looked at women as equal citizens? A lot of them look at us as second class. You know?
Yeah.
And
It's
then
that's
you have
like
daughters.
the human rights are human rights, right?
Yeah.
Like that's just the fundamental start and end of the conversation. Human rights are human rights. And if we expect any group of people to have access to rights, then every group of people should have access to rights. And from a governmental level, it's fundamentally, again, it comes back to this concept of fairness. Americans, we believe that things should be fair. That doesn't mean that everybody has the same. That's just, we know the system doesn't work that way, but it should be fair. And telling one group of people that you can't participate in your democracy just because of your gender or your ethnicity or whatever reason, that's fundamentally wrong and unfair. And
It is.
it's, yeah.
You know, and any reason, whether, oh, you had a gender change and blah, blah, blah. Because again, that's going to be the next step, is they're going to go after, again, that other small group minority of people who have gone through it and had gender changes and changed their birth certificates and all this. Now they have to go back and change their birth certificate back to what their gender was when they were born, instead of what they are now, what they surgically are now. I mean, I'm not sure about you, but personally, that would be demeaning. It made me feel less of a human. It's one of those, I went through all these steps. I changed my birth certificate. I changed this. I did everything right. But now they're trying to push through laws. And I think they actually pushed it through in Florida. I have to double check, where your gender at birth has to be what is on your birth certificate, despite the fact that you may have gone and changed it because you had a transition.
Well, I think Kansas just did this as well, right? So a lot of, there was a lot of concern about this, and I know it impacted, I think, thousands of people in Kansas because their driver's licenses were now void. It just happened overnight, and so they don't have legal, they don't have a legal ID anymore because their driver's license is void. It's just, again, it's an indication that the current government, and I do want to be clear about this, I think it's Republican policy in general right now that is focused on targeting individual rights, stripping individual rights, and making it harder for Americans to participate in their own system. And I fundamentally disagree with that. That's not what we should be aspiring to as a country.
No, and that's something we should all be disagreeing with, because, well, how does it feel to know that your daughters have less rights than the day they were born?
Yep, they have fewer rights now than their mom or their grandma.
I will tell you right now, I have fewer rights than the day I was born. And my daughter has fewer rights than the day she was born. And it is not a good feeling. It's terrifying, to go hand in hand. And I know a lot of states have their abortion ban. I know our state, a judge actually just put into place a permanent stay on the total abortion ban, citing that there are absolutely situations where they should be allowed and listed out like ectopic pregnancy and this one and this one. And when the life's not viable, like if the mother's life is in jeopardy, you do not wait till she goes septic. You save her, period. And I'm like, how hard is it to understand that we just, as women, want to make sure our lives are prioritized, not the unborn creature growing inside of us that has no ability to breathe yet because it doesn't even have lungs. Like
There was, yeah, and I mean, we've all seen these, or if we haven't, we should go out and read them. I think this happened in Georgia, was I think the first documented one, where a woman who's pregnant dies because she can't get access to medical care that she needed. And then you have another woman who's in a coma. She has no hope for life, and she was very early in her pregnancy, and they maintained her pregnancy and used her basically as an incubator.
and you notice how they don't talk about it anymore because it was not the success they wanted it to be.
Yeah, no, the child was born premature and was in no way ready for life. Yeah, my wife and I, we have three daughters, and we are deeply, deeply concerned about what their future looks like across many fronts, which
Yep.
again is one of the reasons why I decided to do this.
And one of the reasons why I'm not just looking at my state, I got friends in Arizona, Texas, Washington, California, New York. I live in the middle. It's like, I don't care what state I'm in. I know somebody who lives in that state. I want them to live in a better life. I don't want them to be in the one state that is like, oh no, that's total authoritarian. No, blah, blah, blah. They can't go to the hospital if they're female because they might be pregnant. If they're pregnant, they're going to be turned away. Just the basic health care as a woman, to know that if turns out I'm pregnant and I walk into an emergency room, they may turn me away because goddamn, I'm pregnant and they don't want to touch that. Because even the liability of touching a pregnant woman at this point in time, because what happens if she miscarries and it was none of her fault, it was your fault? Well,
Yeah.
at that point in the states where they're trying to give the death penalty to women who miscarry, is it actually the woman's fault or the doctor's fault? Then at that point, who's going to get the death penalty? I mean, it's getting to the point where they want to literally, Ohio, they want a fetal certificate within 10 days of a fetal heartbeat being registered by the doctor. And then they want to basically to investigate if a miscarriage happens and it's not a live birth for whatever reason. It's like, that's the whole reason why most women don't even want to get pregnant at this point, is we are terrified for our lives. I wanted a third kid. I wanted a fourth kid. I'm sticking with two. I'm not in this country. I hate to say that. I have
People,
friends who want kids.
yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, please don't, because the state we live in, I'm so terrified if something happens and it goes wrong, I'm going to lose one of my friends.
People often, and I think this happens a lot on the right, like, why don't we have more kids, right? Why aren't people having kids? Why aren't people getting married and building or growing families? And it really comes down to this basic concern about, why would they? They can't afford to have them in the first place. If they do have them and there's medical complications, there are now so many risks to both the mother and the child's health that it creates an environment that makes it incredibly dangerous to have kids. And then you do have kids and you struggle to afford them, and you're giving them a world that looks like what? What is their life going to be like in 20 or 30 years because you've made the decision to go ahead and bring children into it? So I studied political science in college. I've got a bachelor's and a graduate degree in it. But history was always the thing that I tried to pay attention to as well, because I feel like people need to understand history. And there is this anecdotal story that comes out about the fall of the Soviet Union. So this was in the early 80s. The Soviet Union was still on paper very powerful, America's greatest opponent on the international stage. And there was an analyst that said, I know the Soviet Union's going to fall in probably about the next 7 to 10 years. And they're like, how can you possibly predict that? And he said, because they've stopped having kids. They've stopped having kids. That fundamentally tells me that their society is so broken that they can't continue to do the basic thing that a society needs to do, which is to continue to have children and to continue to grow and to continue to thrive. He said they have stopped having children. Women don't want to have children anymore. The Soviet Union has about 7 to 10 years left. Soviet Union fell in late 80s, early 90s, right? So you have the fall of the Berlin Wall, and then you have the dissolution of the USSR. I'm not saying that's the only factor that mattered. It's not. But I am saying it's a pretty strong indicator, I think, of societal health when a generation just starts to collectively say, we don't want to have more children. Because that is a deeply ingrained biological impulse for every organism, is to go ahead and reproduce and perpetuate itself. And so if we have generations now between millennials and Gen Zers, and we've got this upcoming Gen Alpha, and they're saying, we just don't want to have kids. We're done. We're not going to have children. I think that is possibly one of the largest and strongest red flags that is telling us we're fundamentally broken. We have something fundamentally broken, and if we don't fix it, it's going to be disastrous for everybody that comes after us.
I mean, I've told both my kids, as much as I would love grandkids, I'm actually okay if they never have kids, because I understand how expensive kids are. And I'd rather them focus on them enjoying their lives than struggle through raising a kid because they can't afford to. That's where we are. We're trying to give them a better life than we had. And I sit there and I apologize to my kids because I can't give them everything they want. I have to sit there and figure out which things can we do and which things can I say yes to. And so I'm honest with them. I'm like, don't ask for anything right now, guys. We are tighten the buckles because this is what's going on. This is what's going on. And mom just had to pay $3,000 to fix her car. I literally just had to pay $3,000 to fix my car. So things are tight right now. They're going to be tight for a few months because, did you know? And this is a fun thing I found out. Capital One bought Discover, which is in and of itself actually a good thing because that's actually going to allow them to open up a broader market of products to a lot of people. Fantastic. Here's the downside. When they bought that out, turns out they didn't have to honor any of the payment arrangements or agreements they had with any of the people who had Discover. So they decided in October, to not take my payment and to sue me instead. And I didn't find out about this because, surprise, surprise, with what they're doing with the post office, they're purposely holding off, and courthouses are doing this. They've been told to purposely hold off sending out documents so they come in late. Okay? So turns out they had a court hearing on February 10th that I knew nothing about, never got the document letting me know there was a court hearing on the 10th. The final court hearing was on the 2nd of March, which again, I knew nothing about. On the 3rd of March, I get woken up at 8:30 in the morning with a sheriff knocking on my door, handing me the final garnishment paperwork, me looking at it going, okay, cool. And I'm staring at it, not understanding that, I've been sued. Oh, they've actually gone through all the court hearings already. Oh, why was I not notified? Get the mail the next day. It was printed on January 29th. It was sent out February 27th. I got it March 4th, letting me know that there was a court hearing on the 2nd of March. So they didn't want $100. They wanted $195 a month, which I could not afford because I'm in 6 payment plans right now. Why? Child support, medical bills, or medical debt, and cancer. Cancer is what did us in. We had a family member who had cancer, had to pay for it, and they didn't survive. So yeah, that was $12,000 I didn't have, but I was trying. So yeah, everything was working out until it wasn't. So now they want 25% of my wages. So now I got to figure out how I'm going to rob Peter to pay Paul and still put food on the table. And here's the thing is, all I want is to not have to look at my bank account before I buy groceries because I'm not afraid I'm going to go over and be able to afford a family vacation once a year. And I'm not talking Disneyland. I'm just talking be able to take my kids on a road trip to like the Grand Canyon or Old Faithful or Mount Rushmore before they blow up. Like, I'm not asking for much, and I can't even do that.
And I think right there, you have hit on the core problem that so many Americans have right now, which is just life is too expensive and it's fundamentally unfair. If we had a single payer healthcare system, that medical debt would never have been a problem for you or anybody else in your community to have to deal with, which means that you would have been in a better position for something like your car breaking down. Most Americans are 1 to 2 paychecks from bankruptcy. Like that's where Americans live, and we have the largest, wealthiest economy in the world, but that economy disproportionately serves a very small minority of the American people.
Mhm.
There's no reason why anybody who lives here, who works a full-time job, who is, they're going to work, they're putting in an honest day's labor, should not have access to basic goods and services necessary to just live as a human. If I work a full-time job, I should be able to have access to healthcare, a safe place to live, all of the utilities required to go ahead and function in that domicile. I should be able to afford food. I should be able to afford clothing. I should be able to afford reliable transportation, whatever that looks like, right? That could be public transportation. And I should have enough left over to save a little bit each month so that in a year or 2 years, by saving up and working hard, I can start my own business, or I can go back to school, right? So that I can get a better paying job. Or I can go on vacations because that's how I want to spend this disposable income that I have access to. There is no reason why any full-time employed individual in the United States should not have access to those things,
Right.
but they don't.
Right.
Many of them don't. Most of us struggle financially, and it's because the system has been designed to go ahead and provide the wealthy with more advantages and everyday folks with fewer advantages.
No, and you're not wrong. And that's part of the problem. It's part of the reason why I bring up what's happening to me and what I'm going through is because please tell me, when did $100,000 become the poverty line? That's legitimately because between my husband and myself, we make $100,000, if not more, a year, and we struggle. The median income for our state is $46K, so we make double that. We struggle. That is where we look at that wage gap. Okay,
I don't think that's a bad
and mind you, this is across the United States. In every state, I know some states are trying to improve it. Other states, like mine, they don't care. We have people in place who just don't care. They don't care what the wage gap is. They don't care that people aren't making a livable wage. And unfortunately, it's the same in a lot of states. I've seen it in Arizona. I see it in Indiana, Missouri, Minnesota. Let's see, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama. I already said Arizona, Colorado. These are all different states where they don't care what the people are making. They don't care that they can't afford it. As long as things go good on their end, that's all they care about. Perfect example, we'll talk about Department of Education, okay? The fact that the federal government has completely and totally dismantled that and put it into the Department of Labor. In my opinion, that is very telling. That tells me that they don't actually see our kids and the next generations as, anything other than laborers. They don't look at them as having higher educations, as being doctors, as being nurses, as being all of these things. They see them as trade skill workers because that's what laborers are. I know in our state, they are restructuring the curriculum needed for high school graduates to the point where they won't even qualify to go to an in-state four-year college.
I guess that's something.
This is not the only state that's doing that.
I'm sorry. I feel like education is the foundation of prosperity.
It is.
When you have access to education, you can make a better life for yourself, or at least you should be able to.
Because knowledge is power, and whoever has the knowledge has the power. And that's exactly it, is they want to withhold the knowledge from people because, well, if you're ignorant, how do you know there's better? If you're ignorant, how do you know you can do better? If you're ignorant, how do you know that you could step up and actually get more for yourself? He's even stated he loves the uneducated American because the uneducated American is very easy to control. Because as long as you satisfy their basic instincts of needing, food, water, clothing, housing, and, physical intimacy, they're happy. They're taken care of. They don't care. But then you have the other half of the population that's sitting going, yeah, guess what? No. They're wisening up because, again, education is important. Healthcare is important. All the things they're gutting on every state level, it's important. Perfect example, healthcare. You're not wrong. If we had a single payer healthcare system, if we had socialist healthcare, there's so many million Americans who would not be in medical debt. Did you know over the last decade, 68% of all bankruptcies filed were tied to medical debt in some way, shape, or form? That's
I'm
as
not
of
surprised
48
at that
hours ago. I
statistic.
triple checked that number. 68% tied to medical debt. Now, mind you, don't get me wrong, Europe has some some medical debt, but it's maybe 10%. It's very minuscule. Whereas almost every American family has some form of medical debt, because here's the thing is, okay, they just increased their deductibles by $1,000 or more a month. I have one client where their deductible went up $4,000. No, their premium went up $4,000 a month, and their deductible went up to $10,000. So they have to hit $10,000 out of pocket before they are covered, and they also have to pay X amount of money more a month. So she's like, she goes, I can't come see you anymore because we can't keep health insurance. They couldn't keep their health insurance. They couldn't keep their health insurance.
I talk to small business owners, and I apologize. I'm going to have to drop here soon. I have some other responsibilities I have this evening. But I talk to small business owners, and this exact scenario has been shared with me more than once, which is, as a small business owner, as the cost of healthcare has gone up, I've had to make a decision between whether or not my employees have access to healthcare or whether or not I have employees. And so I can't pay both, right? With the rising costs, I can't pay both. And so at the end of the day, the small business owner themselves is uncovered, their family is uncovered for healthcare, and their employees are uncovered for healthcare, but it allows them to at least keep some employees on the books. And so they can continue to pay some people a wage that can continue to work, but they themselves can't even afford the healthcare costs as a small business owner. And I just coming back around to like, what's the platform for the campaign? What are we doing? What do we want to accomplish here? At the end of the day, we are running this campaign so that we can make the lives of everyday people here in Northern Utah better. We want to make sure that you have a house and that you have a chance to buy one. We want to make sure that you have access to healthcare. We want to make sure that when you go to the grocery store, the decision is not, can I buy milk or bread, right? We want you to be able to not even think about that when you walk into the grocery store and out to the checkout line, because you know that you are making,
because you don't have to check, because you got the $2. You know you have the $2 to cover that.
Yeah. You're okay, right? Like, you can walk through the checkout line and in the back of your head, you're not worried that the card's going to be declined, right? Like, we want to make sure that that is the life that you have. We want to make sure that the people who are responsible for horrific abuses against Americans and against people in general are held accountable. We want to make sure that this government fundamentally understands that the rule of law matters. And if you're not going to follow the rule of law, there will be tangible consequences. You're going to find yourself out of elected office. You're going to find yourself in front of a jury if you have committed illegal actions, and you're going to find yourself in prison if you really have done criminal activity, because that is what Americans expect to see take place. And we're going to focus on solving problems here in Northern Utah that affect our entire community. We're going to make sure that the Great Salt Lake has enough water so that in 5 years, we're not all breathing heavy metals and dying of cancer. Like, that's why we're running, is to make sure that everyday people have a shot, not just at surviving, but a real life. And I just thank you. Thank you so much for giving me a few minutes today. And I really appreciate the conversation. Like I said, I apologize that I got to drop, but I do have some other obligations.
No, absolutely. And if you, I'll message you later, and then we can get back together and kind of pick up, because no, I still want to talk about, the ICE and immigration in Utah, how that's affecting the people there. I want to talk more about the Salt Lake and how that's drying up and how that's affecting people. And as for the single payer system, I talked to a few different people who were talking about doing something like the TRICARE Prime for All. So kind of using the basis of what they had for the VA for American citizens and trying to incorporate that. So it's one of those, I'll get some more information on that so that way you can look into it, because I think that might actually help to solve that portion of the gap, because that is something that states can do on a state level, not just on a federal level.
There are options. We know what solutions look like. We just need people to elect representatives that will go and do the work.
Yep. So, but yeah, we'll definitely get together, and we will get together again, and I will have you back on, okay?
All right. Well, thank you so much. You have a wonderful night.
You too, Peter. Take care. So guys, that was Peter Crosby. He is running for Utah Congress, their House of Representatives, so Congress District 2. I'm going to hop off now so that way TikTok can make the entire video and get that over to him. I will be back on, let's see, not tomorrow, but Wednesday to see we will have Michael Potter on. So I look forward to having everybody then, and much love, guys. Take care.